This is the Leadership in Insurance podcast, brought to you by FinPro Search Partners.
Insurance companies are businesses and they need to look for the long term and be sustainable.
We went from 0 to 1 and now it's going from 1 to 100.
Insurance as a concept, as a kind of service, is brilliant. The execution is what we're looking at now. I think the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that are going to understand and master the art of intent. When we talk about innovation, we lean too heavily to think about technology and we don't think about creating a culture of innovation.
I think innovation is essentially continuous improvement of existing processes and platforms and product.
Right? It's got to be easy. It's got to be seamless. Good morning and welcome to the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond, and I'm very lucky today to be joined by Xing, who is CEO and co-founder of Upfort. I suddenly realised that we first spoke when you weren't called Upfort, and we can get into that later. That's why I literally looked at my second screen for 1 second to say, I'm just going to make sure I'm getting this right. Welcome to the pod. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Alex. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, it's great to see you now in two forms.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we were just saying, we were trying to kind of piece together when we last saw each other. But look, before I lead us down memory lane, which is what I like to do, be great if you could introduce yourself and obviously the Upfort business as it is today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm co-founder and CEO of Upfort, and Upfort's platform delivers better underwriting outcomes through automated cyber risk assessment tools and scalable loss control. So specifically, our proprietary AI has been shown to reduce claim frequency by 80% by making it super easy to protect against the key claims that we're seeing out there. And so in short, we're helping insureds get better terms on their cyber insurance and helping them proactively mitigate their cyber risk, all while improving profitability and streamlining processing for everyone else in the value chain.
Amazing. So walk me into the kind of practicalities of that, because when we talk insurtech and we put you in that kit, when we're talking about cyber, usually you're selling policies but you're not doing that. It's very much about the kind of software assessment tool ahead of that.
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, I think it fundamentally leads to there's multiple ways to approach it, right? So many folks have taken the disruptor approach when they feel like they feel like they can operate a certain party better. While we feel like, we took a step back and said, well, frankly, the folks in the value chain are there doing a great job and fulfilling a really good service for that specific role. It's just that there are challenges that technology and data can solve to make them more efficient and to deliver and create value for everybody. And, I think that you could take either approach and create a winning business as long as you are truly creating value for folks. But ultimately, we felt like some of the better attributes of being an enabler is that you can absolutely scale faster and to a greater scale in the long term, because there are such large aggregators within the industry today that can truly benefit from better technology and data to achieve better outcomes. So ultimately, we took that latter route of saying, we want to empower the industry. And we find that there are so many opportunities across that value chain to create better outcomes through that technology and data. And as you mentioned, the risk assessment, along with the actual loss prevention that is delivering better profitability.
Why did you take that approach? Because you guys have been around a little while in terms of, you were certainly in that bracket of people that were coming in and saying, insurance got it all wrong. It's all broken. And I remember when we first spoke, it was like you were sort of singing this tune of going, we're going to give tools to the industry to kind of do what they do, but do it better, more effectively, more efficiently. But you were at that time where disruption was kind of probably the hymn everyone was singing. So why did you go down that path? Is it actually with the makeup of the team, or I was kind of trying to understand where that came from at that time.
I think it was two things primarily. First is, luckily, I was actually building a insurtech before coming to what was then known as Paladin Cyber and co-founding it. And when I saw, I was building a computer vision tool that helped automate claims processing. So another enabler tool in helping to insert AI into workflow to create better profitability and outcomes. But in reality, it was me really observing the industry and saying, hey, there were a lot of disruptors that were getting rewarded, but as you saw some of the business models scale over time, some of the reward felt like it was more private market reward as opposed to a fundamentally strong business the way that I wanted to approach it. That was one. And two, it ultimately comes to when we really looked at it from the grounds up in the cyber market perspective, we thought, what would create the most value and also create the biggest moat? And for us, we think it was really around, but in this really scalable way, the ability to fundamentally transform the economics of a cyber program, especially on the losses side. And, as a relatively small company, you can't both have the resources to create a transformative scalable loss control that the industry hasn't seen, while also trying to be a insurance intermediary in the classic way and try to
Mm.
build a book in that same way. And so part of that is we just felt like the highest value thing we could deliver for the industry was in actually transforming those economics and preventing losses while improving scalability. And you have to make tough choices around where you take that approach. But ultimately, to your point, actually, I think part of it is also the team. My co-founders, one of my co-founders is a former underwriter who managed underwriting at a large carrier, and my other co-founder is essentially he was an Army Cyber Command officer uh, from the reserves, and he was deployed and came back. But his engineering is in security, engineering, and also data. So we kind of
Mhm.
had a really interesting intersection that really focused well on kind of that building that scalable loss control piece.
Mm. Yeah, you can't be a cyber business unless you've got some form of military person with you. It's not
I know,
that's
but
the requirement.
we have the different type of military person. We don't have the right Israeli unit in our in our
No, that's
co-founding
very
team.
true. Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, there was definitely a period of time where it's like you saw a cyber business, you're going, "There's going to be some Israeli cyber unit behind it." Um, I wanted to ask about like specifically where you
Sure.
play, right? Because who is it for?
Yeah.
Is it particularly for SMB businesses,
Yeah.
or is it up to enterprise? Is there a kind of limitation on its effectiveness?
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like whenever someone asks that, they might have a different picture of what that business looks like, and they're in their mind,
Mm,
and we see so many different definitions within the industry. I tell you like this, let's say I think you're probably asking about the security side, right? So on the
yeah,
security
sorry.
side of the question,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. So on the security side of the question, we have companies that are exactly what you're thinking about when you're thinking about small business, right? You're
Mm,
thinking about
mm,
just a couple folks or a small operation. But we actually have companies that have a couple thousand employees on our platform
mm,
with a chief information officer or a security engineer. And really what it is it's two theses. Yes, we have we call it a relatively comprehensive cybersecurity suite. Doesn't mean it has every single cybersecurity thing you need under the sun, but really it's a defense in depth tool, which means multiple layers of defenses, all hitting at the exact entry points that are focused on by cyber criminals because of how profitable it is for them and what the ROI represents for them. And
mm,
it's an effective tool in that for the small end of the spectrum, we see them actually using it as primary defenses for multiple layers, as opposed to larger organizations use it as another layer of protection because some of our AI detection and warning capabilities for employees is actually truly differentiated versus some of the others more mature solutions out of the market because
mm,
it's also powered by some of the things that we're seeing in claims. And so we get a little bit of this, the small end of it. We definitely get and service quite a bit of the small end of the spectrum, but we also service folks with a couple thousand employees as well. Yeah.
mm. Because there's something I've seen you. don't know if I saw this on, forgive me, I can't remember if I saw it in a website or an article or something you've written, but
Yeah.
you talked about, we talk about protection gaps all the time, but you talked about the cyber
Yeah.
protection gap. And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like define what you mean by that. I'm just quite intrigued by that and the reason I'm interested is genuinely from a personal, selfish perspective is that I now sit and look at my business and I look at how much technology we utilize, and we're a five-person executive search business in a really niche
Yeah.
area. But the amount of touch points we've got, the amount of data we carry, these are all things that start to make me nervous, which didn't make me nervous before. So I was like, I'm probably much more invested than I used to be. But yeah, what is that cyber protection gap as you define it?
It's a great question because in reality, I actually look at cyber protection gap in a couple of different ways. And but it's all, I guess, somewhat related, right? So
Mm,
on one lens, I see cyber protection gap as fundamentally the losses and financial impact experienced due to cyber risk and cyber incidents uh, is actually much, much higher than what is insured today, right? From an actual volume there today. So there is a gap in terms of protection and insurance. Ideally, we can help distribute the cost of these this financial cost of cyber risk across a large enough party set, across society, so that it becomes a much more effective and low cost for everybody involved. So on that, I think that's one element. But I actually see, this cyber insurance industry is almost akin to auto insurance before you have seatbelts standardized and mandated in every car, and folks know to use them well. So I see another element of the cyber protection gap just being that so much of the fundamental cybersecurity controls and effective cyber risk management and good cyber hygiene that you would want to see from every organization, there's a lack of investment in some of those, and it's not surprising just because traditionally solutions have been point solutions built for the large enterprise and that very specific user. There hasn't been enough dollars traditionally in the small, mid-size or mid-market servicing those clients. And so, they've been really underserved in terms of actual cybersecurity solutions. And so there's really a cyber protection gap in terms of the uh, need for additional controls and better hygiene through more effective tools, really. So I
mm,
think of that in a two-sided way. And in reality, they're intertwined in terms of the cyber insurance industry because, if the average company had a different cyber hygiene, a different level of proactiveness to managing their cyber risk, then we would probably having the market would look very different, especially from a losses and underwriting perspective.
mm, mm. 'Cause how do you, the single biggest point of weakness is always the human being, right? The employees and
Yeah,
the users. Don't want to say employees actually, because it might not just be
yeah,
employees.
yeah,
But the users.
yeah,
Um, how do you tackle the change of behavior required to even engage? I know you touched on it there. Like the gap is kind of some of the gap is the
yeah,
knowledge and understanding. And how do you get behaviors to change? Because that's the thing I think is interesting. I can't remember. There was a brilliant person on our podcast that was talking about this before. And it was just talking about just things like not many people now would live in a home that doesn't have a smoke detector.
yeah.
But I certainly grew up. I'm 42 years old, and I certainly grew up in my house didn't have a smoke detector for I don't know, probably till I was about 15 because it just wasn't a thing. And the seatbelts
Yeah,
you mentioned it
yeah.
there perfectly. But like, how do you get that behaviour to change? Because the gap's there, but what makes people go in a different direction?
It's a $1 million question, right?
Mm,
Ultimately, driving behavior change is some of the hardest things for us as humans to do, even when we want to drive that, even when we want to change our behavior, it's tough,
mm,
right? And so that's why we think about it as there is no one single bullet, but you need to take a pretty holistic approach to this and look at it from multiple angles.
mm,
First is there always needs to be incentives for behavior change, right? And so ultimately, that's where we think of some of our work with the underwriters in terms of could you get better terms in response for being better at risks? Could
Mm,
you have a really straightforward underwriting process from both the initial application and especially the renewal if you take some very basic actions that might take you just 10 to 15 minutes in order to better proactive mitigate your risk? Could we actually help to and show proactively, I think, over time, right? Can we incentivize people by delivering more value for the product that they are buying so that they get the right tools that they need, right? So on one end, on one element, it's a little bit about incentives and delivering better value. But I think on the other side is why, it's not like folks haven't offered, hey, here's a small discount if you do X, or here's a small discount on another product that will really, really help you.
mm,
I think fundamentally it goes back to the other driver for protection gap we talked about, which is, well, a lot of the tools, a lot of folks are underserved because some of the tools are a little bit way more complex and service a different user in mind. And so
mm,
that's why we had to solve the second portion where you need to reduce friction for that to actually happen. And if if our tool asks everybody to, be a cybersecurity and IT expert and spend hours fixing and implementing a whole bunch of different things, then we wouldn't get anywhere near the take up and adoption and ability to mitigate risk. So we have to constantly, from a product strategy on cybersecurity side, to say, how do we maximize the impact with the minimal amount of work and requirement on the user, especially making it the end user there. And I guess ultimately to your question around, hey, how do you change a user behavior within organizations? That's exactly, we need to take that holistic approach too. And so that cybersecurity suite, we architected it in exactly that way to say,
mm,
first, we're going to train and keep every user up to date on what are the things to look out for, what are the specific tactics that the cyber criminals are taking and how that has changed over time, and just give them real examples, right? And then
mm,
afterwards, throughout the entire year, we're going to sprinkle testing in that uses real life examples of what we've seen in the wild of attacks, and give them a safe place to fail. So if they fail, like let's say they give away their password, or they click on a link, or they download something that they shouldn't and open it, then we give them that feedback directly. Use that as a teachable moment where their mind is actually realizing, hey, I made a mistake, to actually shift behavior in that way and to really reinforce that. But
mm,
ultimately, it's also actually making sure, recognizing, humans are fallible, and that's why we have a AI, almost like a co-pilot for inboxes and browsers. And so we
mm,
have an AI that's also checking everything, both on the browser side and the inbox side, where most of the threats come from, and then
mm,
also provide another warning for employees and users, just in
mhm,
case they had missed something, right? So really thinking about and of course we've also built in some gamification for organizations, and so we built that in wanting to uh, tap into some folks' innate desire to actually be good at things and to be better
mm,
than other folks, and so wanted to also make kind of cybersecurity fun in some way. And so those are, I think, it's a very long-winded answer. And so really thinking about how do we change behavior from organizations and within the industry while also changing behavior within the fundamental user. We think of a
mm,
lot about how do we drive. The only way to drive better outcomes is by actually changing behaviors in terms of prevention.
mm, mm. Yeah, it's an interesting point. You could change like a corporate behavior and it doesn't necessarily roll out across the business unless you change the individual behavior. So like the
Yeah.
scale of the challenge is quite something. Um, what are the just painting a picture here, and I think I'm aware it's such an evolving feast. I mean, that's the challenge of cyber is it's like a continue
Yeah. Yeah.
growing threat. What are the biggest kind of threats at present? What are the kind of yeah, what are the key threats currently in this space?
Yeah, and you're spot on. I think that the attacks are always evolving.
Mm,
The technology that cyber criminals are using is also evolving. Well, I will say though, one of the really interesting ways to think about this is actually, for most companies out there, you're likely not a organization that has nation state secrets that someone's trying to steal from you, in which they're going to be leveraging you, where you have other nation state attackers leveraging the ultimate advanced techniques on you, right? And so what does that mean for a typical company? You can think of your adversary, the cyber criminal, as someone who is financially motivated, right? So there needs to be a strong ROI on their method of attack to you for it to make sense. And that's how even though the specific methods are slightly changing and evolving a bit, fundamentally, if you take the lens that it needs to be fundamentally profitable for them, then there's only a couple of really profitable ways to go about it. So one is, we talked a little bit about the inbox and the end user. Email is super highly profitable, and especially since AI and other tools can make things especially more convincing for every company out there, for every user, even someone who is trained well to recognize it, to believe it, right? So phishing is still the top driver of cybercrime, and where we see it come out in claims is you'll see a lot of business email compromise, where someone has taken over an email account and used email to trick other people, or actually funds transfer fraud. So two of the top claim types for cyber insurance all revolve around phishing, right? And social engineering and tricking people. Even ransomware oftentimes is delivered in that way. The other side of the ransomware delivery is really just the how you configure your services that other people can see and that might let people in. So oftentimes that's remote access services if you need to remotely access something, or a software vulnerability on a server and you haven't updated it. So those are that's another really cost-effective way in, right? So those are essentially two key threats. Now, there has been a little bit, quite a bit more we're seeing of folks leveraging another highly scalable method, which is tapping into the existing software supply chain, right? So that means if you compromise one software company, you might be able to get after all of their clients, which might be a large number. But ultimately, I think we're saying those are essentially fundamentally the most cost-effective ways to get to the highest scale. And while the tax will change, likely there'll be some element of one of those three things being exploited at driving those issues. Yeah.
Mm. That's a really good way to think about it, I think. And I don't think, I genuinely think, I've talked about cyber quite a lot. I don't think anyone's put it in that context before, that, for a small business like mine, it's going to be, what's the most bang for your buck if you're trying to get into my business? Because it's not worth some
Yeah.
repeated attack. But it's worth a
Yeah.
malicious email. It's worth a phishing email. It's worth that.
Yeah.
And I get plenty of them. So
Yeah.
someone's having a go. Often in the form
Yeah.
of a fake invoice. And my
I,
team getting one from
I,
me as well. Company from me anyway.
yeah, exactly. And and oftentimes I think you're really perceptive in thinking it and recognizing the level of cybersecurity you have, both between probably the sensitive data you might have on folks, but also kind of quite a bit of the other element people don't think about as much, especially small businesses, that there's money movement from
Mm,
invoices, vendors, partners,
mm,
etc. And uh, it's so easily convincing these days just to
mm.
tap into that existing flow of money, where just someone is, oh, I'm just approving an invoice or I'm just sending something, and it feels like the most natural thing, and it's 4 o'clock on a Friday, and well, there are probably some large sums going in and out of your organization. So yeah.
Yeah. Not enough. No, no. And I was thinking as you were saying this, I was like, I'm currently battling with using Bill.com because it doesn't really like British companies that operate in the US as much as it should do. And I'm like, I could think this was a hacking email because it's so complex. I want to move away slightly from the threat from and the software side of it, because
Sure.
that's been really insightful. But talking about your insurer partners and
Yeah.
what's your service allowed and your business allowed them to unlock in terms of kind of value? What are the opportunities that you've been able to create with them or for them in the kind of value chain?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think fundamentally I'll tell you a little bit about the platform, and I'll start to make
Mm,
probably a little bit more sense for each of these folks, right? So
sure.
you should think about the platform as, hey, let's say you started fresh and said, I am building the ideal cyber insurance program, and I am not limited by any of the existing tools and folks that I have today. You want probably a really efficient way to collect structured data that also guides folks on the ways to make sure you get better data accuracy. You want to automatically infuse kind of additional risk data, process it, and ideally deliver instant quotes and instant underwriting outcomes for the category of business that you feel like should get straight through processing. You want to manually take a look at the items that you feel like deserve that, and you want it to be flow efficiently throughout everybody, right? And you want to, especially in the cyber business, you want to continuously be able to see and understand what your portfolio's risk looks like, what that exposure looks like, especially as you may be underwriting on a portfolio basis when you're thinking about small to mid-sized companies. Um, and then you want to try to intervene proactively, if possible, if there is a risk, right? If there is a risk. And
Mm,
you know,
mm,
some of that could be abstracted away to pretty much any line of insurance, but a lot of things holding the industry back is just around a lot of legacy systems not communicating with each other, legacy systems not being able to tap into other resources and being able to open and facilitate communication with others. And so thinking about it from the insurer, let's say from the insurer side or the MGA side, there's a couple of different ways that we deliver value. Fundamentally, we've done this. Our platform is extremely modular, so we're not the same thing for everybody. Yes,
mm,
someone could has taken advantage of our platform in a way that essentially uh, achieves that full customer life cycle that I just described, right? But also, folks, you've used it in portions, right? So, for example, some folks utilize this as a underwriting platform and a risk
mm,
assessment platform,
mhm,
in which it is it allows them two things specifically. One is to actually tap into digital trading opportunities at scale,
mm,
and also while simplifying kind of their underwriting operation, while also actually improving the adherence to actually their own underwriting guidelines by presenting and while making it faster for the underwriter. So present recommendations based on their own underwriting guidelines, while also putting all the data that you would want into one place, as opposed to going through, a dozen PDFs and all screens to kind of get to that information. And secondly, is to actually to tap into opportunities that are large scale uh, purchasing opportunities, right? So what I mean by that is often affinity groups, right? So
mm,
oftentimes you have small to mid-sized companies. One of the first places they turn to for their group buying needs, risk management needs, insurance needs is actually an association that they trusted in, and especially an industry association. So what would have been originally a more painful process for everyone, no one wants to tap into, even if it's a potentially great source of business, taking a manual underwriting route, or a broker somehow needing to manually process all that business is extremely challenging. And so our
mm, mm,
essentially digital tools create that infrastructure so that both the broker and the carrier can partner together to go after some of those large opportunities and deliver better solutions and tap into these groups and service them better.
mm. Which is great because it sort of takes us full circle back to like I really love the way that you've positioned the business and I do think like it's no surprise to see a business like yours being successful because it is in that enabler function. You know, it's saying, look, here's a
Yeah,
suite of tools. We can partner with these types of businesses, but there's a modular aspect. So you're not dictating sort of one way of working. And what that means is that you can have competitor businesses utilizing the suite of tools that you've got in different ways so they can create their own USPs in their partnership with you and others. And I think some of the
yeah,
kind of weaknesses of other businesses can be, oh, you can use this tool and it allows you to do this thing. But that means actually, if I buy it and my competitor buys it, then we've immediately got the same product, almost similar product.
yeah.
So, yeah, I love that adaptability that you've got there. Um, I just kind of I'm conscious on kind of like time, so I don't want to overrun and wrap up, but I'm really conscious that I think we got really granular on some of the threat stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, in terms of kind of like anything we've missed, what's coming up for you in terms of kind of developments? What can we expect to see for the rest of 2024 that we should look out for from the Upfort
Yeah.
business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're always investing in our platform. So on the platform enhancement side, you know, we are going to be announcing we actually have an upgraded inbox defender. So a email security tool that actually takes the latest in LLMs and large language model processing to further our ability to really actually help warn, be that AI co-pilot and warn folks. So, and it's even easier to deploy. So really in that, you click I approve, you sign into your Microsoft Google, you click I approve, and then it's instantly deployed to everyone, right? So we've got a great kind of tool there that'll be formally launching. We've also have additional AI um, processing capabilities for our actual insurance intermediary partners. And so there'll be essentially, I think, yet additional automation on the underwriting and submission processing side. So excited for some of those announcements there. In addition to those things, frankly, what you'll hear from us is more folks that we partner with taking that differentiated approach and saying, hey, I want to invest in better outcomes for my policyholder base because I think I think we all believe that if we align incentives for folks to do the right things, we will fundamentally be able to change that behavior and actually ultimately lead to better profitability outcomes as well. So you'll probably hear more folks taking that approach and us talking about it. So yeah, excited. It'll be an action-packed 2024.
Amazing. Amazing. I love what you guys do. And yeah, it's a fascinating space. And what I love is that it doesn't matter how many times we have different cyber related businesses on, everyone kind of like tackling a different slice of this kind of constantly growing and evolving landscape. And yeah, I think taking that enable approach was so smart and ahead of time. So, I don't know if my compliment means anything, but I always thought that at the time when we first spoke, it was like working with the industry and it's there's the insurance has been around for 300 plus years and arguably a lot longer, but like let's say it's a 300-year industry, they're really good at this bit. But giving them the tools to sort of serve their clients better, then I think it's a smart move. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really, really appreciate your time, and I'm glad we got a chance to do this.
Alex, it's so great to catch up with you and look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.